In the vastness of space, where powerful alien empires ruled with fleets of advanced warships, humanity was considered insignificant. The Galactic Union, an alliance of dominant species, tolerated Earth's presence but never saw them as equals. When war erupted between the ruthless Exilver Dominion and the Union, every species was expected to contribute to the fight. Earth, lacking the technological superiority of its allies, had only one ship to offer: the ISV Indomitable, a 300-year-old battleship that was considered obsolete even by human standards. The moment the Union commanders saw it, they laughed. It was bulky, covered in outdated armor plating, and lacked the sleek energy weapons that modern warships carried. Some even mocked it as a fossil from a forgotten war. No one believed it could survive a single battle, let alone change the tide of the war. But Captain Elias Voss and his crew remained silent. Let them laugh, he thought. They had no idea what this ship was capable of. The Indomitable was not sent to the front lines, but instead assigned to patrol duty in a distant sector, a useless mission far from any real conflict. The Union simply wanted to keep the humans busy, pretending to include them while keeping them away from anything important. The crew, however, refused to see it as a punishment. They knew the truth. This ship, though old, was built during an era when humanity was forced to fight with raw power, not fancy technology. Unlike the fragile energy-based warships of today, the Indomitable was a fortress of reinforced titanium, designed to withstand the most brutal battles. Its weapons were not energy-based, but kinetic, gigantic railguns that fired tungsten slugs at near-light speeds. The aliens didn't understand what that meant. Energy shields, which were effective against laser and plasma weapons, were almost useless against pure kinetic force. But the galaxy had long forgotten such weapons, considering them primitive. The crew of the Indomitable knew better. The mission was meant to be routine, just another patrol along the empty border of Union space. But fate had other plans. As the ship approached the Vortex 9 system, its long-range sensors detected something unusual: a fleet of Exilver warships hiding in the asteroid belt. Captain Voss immediately recognized the danger. This was no ordinary patrol. The Exilver were preparing for an ambush, a sneak attack on the core worlds of the Union. If they succeeded, millions would die, and the war would take a devastating turn. The problem was clear: no one would believe them. If the Indomitable retreated and sent a warning, the Union command would dismiss it as an error, unwilling to trust a human crew flying an ancient warship. They had only one option: attack. It was madness. The Indomitable was outnumbered 10-1. The Exilver ships were faster, armed with the latest plasma cannons and disruptor torpedoes. The battle was supposed to be over before it even began. But as the enemy ships moved in for the kill, the humans made their move. Captain Voss ordered the ship to fire its railguns. The Exilver commanders, still underestimating the outdated warship, didn't even bother to raise full shields. A fatal mistake. The first volley struck like a thunderstorm, massive tungsten slugs tearing through the lead Exilver cruiser as if it were made of paper. The explosion sent debris flying in all directions, shocking the enemy fleet. They had never seen a weapon like this before. Panic spread through the Exilver ranks as another round of railgun fire shattered two more ships. Their shields were useless, their armor too thin to withstand the raw kinetic force. Realizing the threat too late, the Exilver tried to regroup, firing their energy weapons in return. But the Indomitable was built for endurance. Plasma and lasers scorched its outer hull, but its thick armor absorbed the damage. Unlike modern warships, which relied on delicate shield systems, this ship was a walking fortress. The crew continued their relentless assault, launching a barrage of tungsten slugs and high-explosive torpedoes. One by one, the enemy ships fell. Within minutes, what was once an ambush force turned into a desperate retreat. The Exilver fled, leaving behind burning wreckage and shattered hopes of victory. Silence filled the bridge as the last enemy signal disappeared from the radar. The crew barely believed what they had just done. A single obsolete warship had annihilated an entire enemy fleet. But Captain Voss knew this was only the beginning. The Union would soon hear of what happened, and they would have no choice but to recognize the truth. The Indomitable was no relic. It was a weapon built to outlast time itself. As he looked at the stars ahead, he couldn't help but smile. They had laughed at his ship. Now, the galaxy would never forget its name. The vastness of space was silent, yet it held dangers beyond imagination. The ISV Indomitable, an old and forgotten human warship, moved through the Vortex 9 system, its dull gray hull scarred from past battles. It had been sent on a routine patrol, a mission meant to keep it out of the real war, away from the front lines where the Galactic Union's modern fleets were fighting the Exilvar Dominion. No one expected this outdated ship to do anything significant. But as Captain Elias Voss stood on the bridge, staring at the radar screen, he knew that fate had different plans. The screen showed something that shouldn't have been there: multiple enemy signatures hidden within the asteroid belt ahead. His heart pounded as he realized the truth. This wasn't a random patrol. They had stumbled upon a Zelvar invasion force, one that was lying in wait to strike the heart of the Union. If they succeeded, millions would die, and Indomitable was the only thing standing in their way. The bridge was tense. The crew, though experienced, knew what they were up against. The Exilvar warships were sleek and deadly, armed with the latest energy cannons and cloaking technology. Their shields could absorb most attacks from modern fleets, and they had the numbers: at least 10 enemy vessels, each one superior in speed and firepower. In contrast, Indomitable was a relic of a different era, a massive, heavily armored battleship armed with kinetic railguns, a weapon long abandoned by the rest of the galaxy. No one used railguns anymore. The aliens had evolved past such primitive technology. But that was their mistake. Energy shields could block lasers and plasma, but they were nearly useless against solid metal slugs traveling at near light speed. Captain Voss took a deep breath, his mind calculating the odds. They were terrible, but retreat wasn't an option. The Union wouldn't believe them. They had only one choice: to strike first. Without hesitation, Voss gave the order. The Indomitable's massive railguns roared to life, sending tungsten slugs screaming through the void. The first round struck the lead Exilvar ship, a sleek black destroyer, punching through its shields like they weren't even there. The impact shattered its hull in an instant, causing a massive explosion that sent debris scattering in all directions. The enemy fleet hesitated, caught off guard. They had expected an easy ambush, not a brutal counterattack. But hesitation was fatal in battle. The Indomitable fired again, and another Exilvar ship was torn apart. The enemy finally reacted, unleashing a storm of plasma fire. Bright blue energy bolts streaked toward the human warship, but the Indomitable was built for. Missiles streaked through space, finding their marks. Explosions lit up the battlefield as another Exilvar ship was engulfed in flames. The aliens were panicking now. They had never faced a warship like this before. The Indomitable was supposed to be outdated, useless. Instead, it was tearing through them with relentless firepower. The enemy tried to fall back, their sleek vessels twisting and turning in an attempt to escape, but Voss was already one step ahead. He had studied Exilvar tactics. He knew they relied on speed, on striking quickly and retreating before suffering heavy losses. But there was nowhere to run. The Indomitable launched its final assault. The railguns fired in rapid succession, sending shockwaves through space as more Exilvar ships were ripped apart. The last few survivors tried to flee, their engines burning bright as they accelerated away from the battlefield. Voss let them go. He wanted them to run. He wanted them to carry the message back to their commanders that humanity was not weak, that their so-called outdated warship had crushed them. As the enemy signatures vanished from the radar, silence filled the bridge. The crew slowly exhaled, their faces reflecting a mix of shock and triumph. They had done the impossible. But Voss knew this was only the beginning. The Galactic Union would soon hear of what had happened. They had dismissed Indomitable as a relic, a forgotten piece of history. Now, they would have no choice but to acknowledge its power. And the Exilvar? They would remember this battle. They would remember the day they underestimated humanity and paid the price. As the ship drifted through the wreckage of its enemies, Voss allowed himself a small smile. The galaxy had laughed at Indomitable. They wouldn't be laughing anymore. The battle at Vortex 9 had changed everything. The ISV Indomitable, the warship that everyone had mocked, had single-handedly crushed an entire Excelver fleet. The news spread like wildfire across the Galactic Union, shocking admirals and politicians alike. No one had expected an outdated human warship to survive, let alone achieve such a decisive victory. But despite their surprise, the Union still refused to see humanity as a true power. They called it luck. They called it an anomaly. They still believed that Earth's technology was primitive, that the Indomitable was just a relic that had stumbled into victory. Captain Elias Voss knew better. He also knew the war was far from over. The Excelver Dominion would not let this humiliation go unanswered. Their revenge would be swift and brutal. And when intelligence reports revealed that the Excelver were building a superweapon on the planet Draxia Prime, Voss realized the war was about to reach its breaking point. Draxia Prime was no ordinary world. It was a fortress planet, deep in enemy territory, protected by powerful fleets and planetary shields. The Excelver were developing something there, something capable of wiping out entire armadas in a single strike. The Galactic Union debated for days, arguing whether an attack was even possible. Most believed it was suicide. The defenses were too strong, the risks too high. The Union's admirals refused to commit their fleets, fearing catastrophic losses. But Voss didn't hesitate. If the Union wouldn't act, then Indomitable would go alone. His crew didn't question him. They had already done the impossible once. They would do it again. ASA. The warship prepared for its most dangerous mission yet. Voss made a decision that no one in the galaxy expected. Deep within the ship's classified archives, hidden under layers of security, was a forgotten secret, a weapon that had never been used before. It was called Project Ragnarok, an experimental doomsday device developed in the past, then locked away because it was deemed too dangerous, too uncontrollable. Even the Galactic Union didn't know it existed. But now, with the fate of the war hanging in the balance, Voss knew there was no other choice. He activated the weapon. The crew didn't know what to expect, but they trusted their captain. The Indomitable wasn't just any warship. It was a legend in the making. The journey to Draxia Prime was perilous. The Excelver had doubled their patrols, hunting for the warship that had embarrassed them. Every sector was crawling with enemy forces, but Indomitable used its old but powerful engines to slip past their defenses, hiding in the radiation belts of dead stars, using asteroid fields as cover. The crew remained silent, tense, knowing that a single mistake would mean death. But luck, or perhaps fate, was on their side. They reached the outer edge of Draxia Prime's system undetected. And then they saw it. The planet loomed ahead, surrounded by a massive space station, a fleet of warships, and a shimmering energy shield that protected its surface. This was the heart of the Excelver war machine. Attacking it directly would... The enemy hadn't detected them yet, so Voss gave the order. The Indomitable powered up its railguns and fired at nothing. The Excelver fleet immediately went into high alert, searching for the source of the attack. It was a distraction, a carefully planned trick. While the enemy focused on the wrong location, the Indomitable made its move, slipping through a hidden weakness in their defense grid. By the time the Excelver realized what was happening, it was too late. The ship was already in position above the planet. With a deep breath, Voss activated Project Ragnarok. The warship's hull split open, revealing a weapon unlike anything ever seen before. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a missile. It was a nanite swarm, a self-replicating cloud of microscopic machines designed to consume everything in their path. The Excelver had never faced such a horror before. The swarm descended onto the planet's surface, bypassing the shields as if they weren't even there. Within minutes, entire cities began to dissolve. The enemy's superweapon facility, the heart of their war effort, was erased from existence. The Excelver forces panicked, desperately trying to fight back, but nothing could stop the swarm. Buildings, vehicles, even the land itself began to vanish, reduced to dust. The planet was dying. The Excelver fleet, realizing the catastrophe unfolding below, turned their weapons toward Indomitable, desperate to destroy the ship responsible for this nightmare. Plasma bolts and missiles filled the sky, but Voss was already prepared. The warship fired its railguns with pinpoint accuracy, shattering enemy vessels one by one. The remaining Excelver ships, faced with an unstoppable enemy above and an apocalyptic force below, did the only thing they could. They fled. Draxia Prime, once the symbol of Excelver strength, was reduced to a wasteland. The battle was over. ASE, the Indomitable made its escape. Voss looked at the ruined planet behind them. He had done what no one else dared to do. The Galactic Union would call him reckless. The Excelver would call him a monster. But he didn't care. The war had just changed, and now the galaxy knew the truth: humanity was not weak. They were not outdated. They were the future. And if anyone dared to challenge them again, they would remember the name Indomitable and the weapon that had turned an empire's greatest stronghold into dust. The war had reached a turning point. The destruction of Draxia Prime sent shockwaves across the galaxy, leaving the Excelver Dominion scrambling to recover. Their once invincible fleets were now cautious, their expansion halted by the unexpected rise of humanity. The Galactic Union, which had doubted Earth's military strength, was forced to acknowledge the truth: humanity was not weak. But while politicians debated and admirals hesitated, Captain Elias Voss knew the war was far from over. The Excelver would retaliate, and when intelligence reports revealed a hidden enemy facility deep in their territory, one responsible for building advanced warships and experimental weapons, Voss saw an opportunity. Destroying it would cripple the Excelver war effort. But this time, brute force wasn't an option. The target was hidden within an asteroid belt, surrounded by automated defenses and patrolled by a relentless fleet. A direct assault would be suicide. The only way in was through infiltration. For the first time, ISV Indomitable would not fight as a warship, it would fight as a ghost. Voss and a small team of elite operatives prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. Their plan was simple but deadly. Using stolen Excelver codes and a captured enemy transport, they would infiltrate the facility under the guise of a routine supply delivery. Once inside, they would plant high-yield explosives at critical locations, crippling the base from within before the enemy even realized what was happening. It was a high-risk mission. If they were discovered, there would be no escape. But the fate of the war depended on it. The journey to the enemy stronghold was nerve-wracking. The captured Excelver transport drifted toward the asteroid belt, its engines humming softly. Inside, Voss and his team remained silent. Every second felt like an eternity as they approached the checkpoint. Excelver sentries scanned the ship, their alien eyes narrowing in suspicion. Voss held his breath, gripping his concealed weapon tightly. If they detected anything unusual, the mission would end before it even began. But after a tense moment, the sentries waved them through. The transport glided past the blockade and into the heart of the facility. They were in. Inside, the base was a maze of steel corridors and glowing control panels. Alien engineers and soldiers moved about, unaware that death had just walked through their doors. The team split into groups, each heading toward their assigned target. The explosives had to be placed at key points: the main power reactor, the weapons manufacturing bay, and the fleet command center. Every step was dangerous. The Excelver were a paranoid race, their security systems designed to detect the smallest anomaly. One wrong move and alarms would blare, sealing their fate. But Voss had chosen the best. His operatives moved like shadows, planting charges with precision, bypassing security systems with practiced ease. Minutes turned into an eternity as they worked in silence, each second bringing them closer to either victory or disaster. Then, everything went wrong. A Excelver officer, suspicious of the disguised humans, stopped one of Voss's men for questioning. The operative hesitated for a fraction of a second, just enough for the alien to realize the truth. The officer reached for his weapon, but Voss was faster. A single suppressed shot ended the threat. The Excelver's communicator crackled with incoming calls. The base had noticed something was wrong. The alarm would sound in seconds. There was no time left for caution. Voss made a split-second decision. Detonate the charges now. The explosions tore through the facility, sending shockwaves through the asteroid belt. Fire and debris filled the corridors as the base's structure began to collapse. The mission had succeeded, but now they had to escape. The team sprinted toward the hangar, enemy forces swarming behind them. Plasma fire lit up the halls, burning through steel walls as Exelvar soldiers pursued them with relentless fury. One by one, the operatives fell, cut down by enemy fire. Voss knew they couldn't all make it. His heart pounded as he covered the retreat, taking down enemies with precise, brutal efficiency. The hangar doors loomed ahead, their stolen transport waiting just beyond. They were so close. Then, disaster struck again. A towering Exelvar warlord stepped into their path, his massive form blocking the only exit. His armor was reinforced, his plasma blades crackling with lethal energy. Voss didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, dodging the alien's first strike by inches. The warlord was faster than any human, but Voss was desperate. He weaved past another attack, drawing his last explosive charge and slamming it against the warlord's chest. The alien barely had time to react before the device detonated, sending both of them flying. Pain seared through Voss's body as he crashed against the floor, but he forced himself up. The warlord was dead. The path was clear. With the last of his strength, he stumbled onto the transport as the surviving crew pulled him aboard. The engines roared to life, and the ship blasted out of the hangar just as the entire facility erupted in flames. The asteroid belt was now a graveyard of debris, the enemy's secret weapon factory wiped from existence. The mission was over. They had won, but at a terrible cost. AS Indomitable welcomed them back. Voss looked at the stars, knowing the war had just taken another turn. The Exelvar were running out of weapons, running out of options. Humanity had struck a blow that could not be ignored. The next battle was coming, and when it did, the galaxy would finally understand humanity was not just surviving. They were winning. The galaxy was no longer the same. The destruction of Draxia Prime had shattered the Exelvar Dominion's confidence, and the infiltration of their secret weapons facility had left them crippled. Their fleets, once unstoppable, now hesitated at the sight of a lone human warship. But Captain Elias Voss knew this wasn't the end. He had seen enough wars to understand one thing: the enemy was most dangerous when wounded. The Exelvar were not retreating. They were preparing for something bigger, something desperate. The Galactic Union believed humanity had already won, but Voss wasn't fooled. His instincts screamed that a final battle was coming. He had to be ready. The ISV Indomitable moved through deep space, its crew tense as reports came flooding in. Zelvar fleets were gathering at the edge of the neutral zone, their ships forming a massive blockade around a single world, Zyphos 7. It was a barren, lifeless rock, seemingly of no importance. But intelligence reports hinted at something else. The Exelvar were protecting something there, something so valuable they were willing to risk everything. The Galactic Union debated for days, arguing whether to strike or wait. But Voss had no patience for politics. If the Exelvar had a final weapon hidden on Zyphos 7, it had to be destroyed. And if no one else would act, Indomitable would do it alone. The mission was suicide. The Exelvar blockade consisted of over 50 warships, each bristling with plasma cannons and missile arrays. A direct assault would mean certain death. But Voss didn't plan on a direct assault. He planned something far worse. As Indomitable approached the battlefield, its systems powered down. Engines silent, weapons cold, the great warship drifted like a ghost. To the Exelvar, it looked like nothing more than a derelict, a broken relic lost in space. It was a trick, a deadly one. The enemy patrols barely noticed as the ship slipped past their defenses, moving closer to Zyphos 7 without raising suspicion. And then, when the moment was right, Voss gave the order. The ship roared back to life, its railguns unleashing hell. The Exelvar fleet, caught off guard, scrambled to react, but it was already too late. Indomitable tore through the blockade, moving with brutal efficiency. Enemy ships exploded in brilliant fireballs, their hulls shredded by tungsten slugs moving at hypersonic speeds. The Exelvar counterattacked, plasma bolts slamming into indomitable shields, shaking the entire vessel. But the warship did not stop. It pushed forward, carving a path through the chaos, heading straight for the planet below. Voss knew they wouldn't last in a prolonged battle. They had one shot to end this war. ASS. The ship entered Xiphos 7's atmosphere. Sensors detected something massive beneath the surface. This was it, the Excelver's last weapon. A super weapon buried deep underground, its power signature unlike anything humanity had ever seen. If they activated it, the war would be lost. There was no time to think. Voss ordered a full-scale bombardment, unleashing everything the warship had. Railgun rounds ripped into the planet's crust, missiles carving deep into the rock. The ground trembled as massive explosions rocked the surface. But it wasn't enough. The Excelver had built their last weapon to withstand planetary attack. The only way to destroy it was from within. Voss made his decision. He would go down himself. Taking a small strike team, he boarded a dropship and plunged toward the planet. Enemy fire rained down on them, plasma bolts lighting up the sky, but they pushed forward. The dropship slammed into the ground, skidding to a halt near the entrance of the Excelver facility. There was no time to rest. Voss and his soldiers stormed forward, blasting through alien guards, forcing their way inside. The halls were filled with the sounds of gunfire and screams as the humans fought their way deeper. Every step was brutal. Every second was a fight to survive. Then they saw at the core of the weapon. A massive, pulsating structure of energy, guarded by an elite Excelvar unit. This was their last stand. The enemy fought with everything they had, their desperation turning them into savage warriors. Voss took a hit, plasma searing through his shoulder, but he kept moving. His team was dying around him, but they didn't stop. They reached the core, planting charges along its surface. The Excelvar commander roared in rage, lunging toward Voss with a blade of pure energy. The human barely dodged in time, firing his last round straight into the alien's skull. The mission was complete. Voss activated the detonator, and the world shook. The core exploded, sending shockwaves tearing through the underground facility. The entire planet began to collapse, massive cracks splitting across its surface. Voss and his surviving team sprinted back to their dropship, the ground crumbling beneath their feet. The ship lifted off just in time, racing toward the sky as Xiphos 7 died below. As they reached orbit, they saw the Excelver fleet in full retreat. Their last hope had been destroyed. The war was over. Back on Indomitable, Voss stood on the bridge, staring at the battlefield. He had done what no one thought possible. Humanity had not just survived. They had won. The galaxy would never be the same again. The war had changed. And now, humanity was the new power in the stars.